The Endurance drifted silently through the star-speckled void, its ion engines powering down as it approached the strange crystalline structure that floated before them. Commander Alex stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the main view screen, fingers tapping nervously against the console. "Are we receiving any response to our hails?" Alex asked, voice steady despite the tension filling the room. Officer Tom shook his head. "Nothing that our systems can recognize as communication, Commander." Just as Alex was about to order another attempt, the view screen flickered. Patterns of light, blues, purples, and whites, danced across the screen in what seemed like organized sequences. "It's communicating," whispered Kate, the xenolinguist. Her eyes darted between her screens, recording and analyzing the patterns. "These aren't random. There's structure here." Alex leaned forward. "Can we respond?" "I'm working on it," Kate replied, fingers flying across her interface. Within minutes, she had programmed the ship's external lights to flash in similar patterns, simplified, but mimicking the basic structure they'd observed. The response was immediate. The crystalline structure before them pulsed with intense light, almost like excitement. "I think we've made first contact," Alex said, unable to hide a smile. Over the next 12 hours, Kate worked tirelessly to establish a rudimentary communication system. What they discovered was remarkable. The beings called themselves the Lumen, a crystalline species that communicated primarily through patterns of light. When visual communication had advanced enough, Alex agreed to board a shuttle and approached the Lumen structure for a face-to-face meeting. With Kate and a small security team, they docked at an entry point that had formed in the crystalline habitat. The interior was breathtaking, a cathedral of crystal that refracted light in ways that made the entire space seem alive. And then they appeared. The Lumen moved like dancing shards of crystal, each about the size of a human, but with translucent bodies that pulsed with inner light. The leader, who introduced itself through light patterns as Bell, approached Alex slowly. Kate translated through a device she had hastily programmed. "They welcome us and are curious about our solid forms," she said. "They've never encountered beings like us." Alex stepped forward, hand raised in greeting. Bell mimicked the gesture, floating closer. But as the crystalline beam came within a foot of Alex, radiation detectors on their suits began to beep urgently. Alex instinctively stepped back. Bell froze, light patterns changing to what seemed like confusion. "They emit a form of radiation," Officer Tom said, checking his scanner. "Nothing immediately dangerous with our suits on, but prolonged exposure would be problematic." Kate translated this to Bell using light patterns. The Lumen leader's body dimmed slightly, which Kate interpreted as disappointment or concern. Through Kate's translation, Bell expressed fascination with humans, but seemed puzzled by their physical reaction to proximity. When Alex explained through Kate that close contact might harm humans, Bell's light patterns became erratic. "I believe they're distressed by this news," Kate said. "They value physical proximity in their culture. The concept that their natural state could harm another being seems to trouble them deeply." Despite this complication, the meeting continued productively. The Lumen offered to share knowledge and resources, and Alex proposed a cultural exchange program. Bell agreed enthusiastically, suggesting that Alex remain as Earth's ambassador to develop their relationship further. As they prepared to leave, Bell approached Alex again, stopping at a safe distance. Through Kate's translator, Bell's light patterns formed a question that would come to define their relationship. "Why can't we ever touch you, human?" Alex had no simple answer, but promised they would work to find a way to bridge the gap between their species. As the shuttle departed, Alex gazed back at the crystalline structure housing the Lumen, knowing that humanity had just encountered perhaps its most profound challenge yet, forming a bond with beings they could never physically touch. 3 weeks passed since first contact, and the human diplomatic team had settled into a section of the Lumen crystal structure that had been modified for their safety. Special shielding installed by the engineering team reduced radiation to safe levels, allowing them to work and live in proximity to the lumen without their protective suits. Alex sat in what the humans called the interface chamber, where radiation levels remained low enough for comfort while still allowing clear visual communication with the lumen. Bell floated on the other side of a transparent barrier, its crystalline body pulsing with patterns that Kate's translation device now interpreted with growing accuracy. "Your species builds shelters on planets." Bell's lights flickered as the translator converted them to speech. "Why not live among the stars as we do?" Alex smiled. "We evolved on a planet's surface. We need gravity and Earth beneath our feet to feel at home." Bell's body brightened. "Fascinating. We lumen have always lived in space, drawing energy from starlight." Their conversations had followed this pattern for days, each sharing details about their species, cultures, and histories. The Lumen Society valued collective harmony above all else. They shared thoughts and memories through direct contact, their crystalline bodies merging temporarily to exchange information in its purest form. "When lumen meet," Bell explained, its lights shifting to deeper blues, "we touch and know each other completely. It is our most sacred form of connection." Alex nodded. "Humans touch too. Handshakes, hugs, holding hands. Physical contact is important to us as well." Bell drifted closer to the barrier, its light dimming slightly. "Yet we cannot share this experience. An invisible wall will always separate us." The translation couldn't fully capture the emotion, but Alex sensed a profound sadness in Bell's changing patterns. Later that evening, Alex met with the human team in their common area. The room buzzed with excitement as scientists and diplomats shared their discoveries about lumen culture and biology. "Their crystalline structure contains memory," exclaimed Dr. Ray, the team biologist. "When they touch, they literally share experiences at a molecular level." Kate added, "Their language has no concept of deception." "Why would it? You can't lie when sharing your actual memories." Alex listened, troubled by something Bell had said. The inability to touch seemed to genuinely distress the lumen leader. The next day, Alex returned to the interface chamber to find Bell waiting, its light patterns subdued. "I have been thinking about our difference," Bell began through the translator. "For lumen, touch is knowledge. Touch is truth. Without it, how can we truly know you?" Alex leaned forward. "We communicate through words, expressions, actions. Humans connect deeply without always touching. But the barrier remains." Bell's lights pulsed slowly. "We lumen share everything through contact. Our histories, memories, feelings, all flow between us. Without this, relationships feel incomplete." Bell drifted to the barrier, placing what approximated a hand against it. Alex, understanding the gesture, placed his hand on his side, mirroring Bell. Only inches of transparent material separated them, but it might as well have been light years. "Why can't we ever touch you, human?" Bell asked, its lights dimming to a soft glow. "Is this to be the eternal question between our kinds?" The translator fell silent, but the meaning was clear. This wasn't just about physical contact. It was about true understanding between vastly different forms of life. "We'll find a way," Alex promised, though he wasn't sure how. "Humans are good at solving impossible problems." Bell's lights brightened slightly, as are the lumen. "Perhaps together, we will discover a bridge between our worlds." Alex nodded, hand still pressed against the barrier, feeling both the promise and the challenge that lay ahead. Finding connection where nature itself seemed determined to keep them apart. The human lumen science team gathered in the laboratory section of the station. Screens displayed data collected over weeks of careful study. Alex stood beside Bell, separated as always by the protective barrier. Today was important. They would finally share the complete findings about their biological incompatibility. Dr. Ray pointed to a holographic display showing a lumen crystal structure. The lumen's bodies naturally emit alpha radiation as part of their life processes. It's how they communicate and share energy among themselves. The display shifted to show human cellular structure. "For lumen, This radiation is vital. For humans, prolonged exposure damages our cells, causing radiation sickness and eventually death. Bell's light patterns dimmed dramatically as Kate translated this information. The other lumen in the room also darkened, their movements becoming slow and hesitant. So our natural state harms you? Bell's question came through the translator, the artificial voice unable to capture the distress evident in the light patterns. Alex nodded. Yes, it's not your fault. It's simply how our biologies differ. Your radiation is part of what makes you beautiful and unique. We have never encountered this before. Bell's lights pulsed slowly. All other species we've met could share physical space with us. None were harmed by our presence. A heavy silence filled the room. Dr. Ray continued with the presentation, showing various simulations of potential solutions, but none seemed practical for long-term interaction. Later, Alex found Bell alone in the observation dome. The lumen leader floated motionless, its crystalline body barely glowing as it stared out at the stars. Bell. Alex approached the barrier between them. Are you all right? The translator picked up Bell's faint light patterns. We lumen pride ourselves on bringing light and knowledge to the universe. Now we learn that our very essence harms those we wish to know. It is difficult to accept. Alex sat down near the barrier. I want to show you something. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a long scar on his arm. When I was young, I was in an accident. Metal cut deep into my arm. Bell drifted closer, lights pulsing with interest. Humans are physically fragile in many ways, Alex continued. But we're also remarkably resilient. We heal. We adapt. We overcome limitations. Alex tapped his communication device, and images appeared on Bell's side of the barrier. Humans climbing mountains, diving into oceans, walking on the moon, building cities in deserts. Physical vulnerability doesn't define us. It's taught us to be creative, to solve problems, to build tools that extend beyond our natural abilities. Bell's lights brightened slightly. You are saying that limitation breeds strength. Often, yes. And this situation, our inability to touch, is just another problem to solve. Bell's body began to pulse more vibrantly. Then we shall solve it together. The lumen do not accept barriers as permanent. Neither do humans. Alex smiled. Over the next days, Bell called a council of lumen elders. Alex watched from behind the barrier as Bell's light patterns flashed passionately, making the case for dedicating resources to finding a solution. Some elders' patterns suggested skepticism. One particularly bright elder approached the barrier where Alex stood. Why should we change for them? The elders' patterns translated. Perhaps they are too fragile to join the galactic community. Bell moved between them. They are not fragile. They are different. And in difference, there is strength we do not possess. The elders' lights pulsed rapidly, then steadied. Finally, a pattern that translated as agreement. Bell turned to Alex, its body glowing brighter than ever before. The Council will support a joint research initiative. We will find a way for our kinds to touch, human. For the first time since they'd met, Alex felt a real hope that the question, why can't we ever touch you, human, might someday have a different answer. The research facility bustled with activity. 1 month had passed since the Lumen Council approved the initiative, now officially named Project Handshake. The name had been Alex's suggestion, simple but meaningful. In the central laboratory, human engineer Morgan hunched over a workbench, adjusting a glove-like device. Morgan had arrived with the second wave of human specialists, bringing expertise in radiation shielding technology. Try the output again, Morgan called to a human technician. Readings flashed across screens as the device powered up, creating a thin energy field around the glove. For a moment, the field held steady, then flickered and died with a small spark. Still not stable, Morgan sighed, making notes. The field collapses under any significant radiation pressure. Across the lab, separated by the ever-present barrier, Bell and a team of Lumen scientists observed. Their bodies pulsed with patterns that Kate's translator interpreted as technical discussions about energy modulation. Perhaps we approached this wrong. Bell's lights flickered. We try to block our radiation. What if instead we redirect it? Morgan looked up, intrigued. Like a river around a rock instead of a dam. Precisely. Bell brightened. The collaboration continued day and night. The Lumen, who did not sleep as humans did, continued working while the humans rested. Morgan often stayed late, watching the Lumen work through the barrier, fascinated by how they merged occasionally to share information directly. Not everyone supported the project. A group of human scientists argued that the resources could be better used studying Lumen technology for Earth's benefit. Similarly, some Lumen elders questioned the value of such effort for what they considered a minor issue. During one difficult day after another failed test, an elder named Glow entered the lab, its light patterns sharp and critical. "This project wastes our collective energy," Glow's patterns translated. "The humans should accept our natural separation." Bell's lights pulsed firmly in response. Connection between different kinds brings new knowledge. This barrier limits both our species. Alex, who had been observing, stepped forward. "If I may, Elder Glow, throughout human history, we've grown most when connecting with those different from ourselves." Glow's lights dimmed slightly, considering. "Your kind is remarkably stubborn. We call it determination." Alex smiled. Glow departed without further comment, but the encounter left the team feeling the pressure of expectations. Late that night, Morgan sat alone in the lab, reviewing test results. Every approach had failed. The radiation-blocking materials became brittle, the energy fields collapsed, the redirection concepts proved too complex to implement. Morgan rested head in hands, frustrated. "We're missing something obvious." Just then, Bell appeared on the other side of the barrier, its light dim as if trying not to disturb. "You should rest." Bell's patterns translated softly. "I can't. We're so close, but something's not clicking." Bell's lights pulsed thoughtfully. "May I show you something?" On Bell's side, a display activated showing Lumen children playing what appeared to be a game, their crystalline forms moving in coordinated patterns, sometimes coming close but never quite touching. "This is how our young learn control," Bell explained. "They practice modulating their energy output, creating safe spaces between them." Morgan stared, something clicking into place. "That's it. We've been trying to block your radiation completely. What if instead we created a field that could modulate it to safe levels?" Bell brightened considerably. "A field that speaks to our bodies, telling them to reduce output." "Exactly." Morgan jumped up, grabbing a tablet to sketch the new concept. Not a shield, a translator. As Morgan worked frantically to redesign the device, Bell's lights pulsed with what the translator identified as excitement and hope. "If this works," Bell's patterns flickered, "what will be the first thing you wish to do when we can safely touch?" Morgan looked up from the tablet, smiling. "I think a handshake would be appropriate, don't you?" Bell's entire form glowed brightly in agreement. Alarms blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights flashed, casting eerie shadows across the once peaceful corridors. Alex ran toward the command center, heart pounding in his chest. "What happened?" he demanded as he burst through the door. Officer Tom looked up from the emergency console, face grim. "Micro-meteor strike. Hit the east sector power coupling. We've lost primary life support in sections 3 through 7. Alex's blood went cold. "Casualties?" "None reported yet, but..." Tom hesitated. "We have 5 Lumen civilians trapped in Section 4. The radiation containment field is failing. And our people. All accounted for except..." Tom's voice dropped. Morgan was in Section 4, working on the prototype. Alex grabbed a communication device. "Morgan, come in." Static crackled, then Morgan's voice came through, strained but clear. "I'm here, Commander. With the Lumen civilians. Situation's not great. Hang tight. Rescue team is on the way." Alex turned to Tom. "Get a team in radiation suits." "Sir." Tom interrupted. The suits were damaged in the impact. Repair crew is working on them, but it'll be at least 30 minutes. Morgan's voice came through again. Commander, the containment field is failing. The lumen are safe, but when it goes completely. No one needed to finish the thought. Without protection, Morgan would be exposed to lethal levels of radiation from the 5 lumen trapped there. Bell floated into the command center, its lights pulsing rapidly with alarm. What has happened? Our people report distress. Alex quickly explained the situation. Bell's light dimmed dramatically. Your engineer will die if exposed to 5 lumen without protection, Bell's patterns translated. I know, Alex said grimly. We need 30 minutes to repair the suits. Morgan's voice crackled through the comm again. The field's down to 20%. Maybe 10 minutes left. Bell's lights pulsed in what seemed like rapid calculation. There is a maintenance passage connecting to Section 2. It is small but could allow evacuation. Morgan, Alex called. Do you hear that? There's a passage. I see it, Morgan replied. But it's tiny. The lumen can fit, but it'll be tight for me. Guide them out first, Alex ordered. For several tense minutes, they listened as Morgan directed the lumen civilians to the passage. One by one, the crystalline beings squeezed through to safety. All lumen evacuated, Morgan reported, voice weaker now. Field at 5%. Now you, Alex commanded. Get out of there. A pause. Can't. The last lumen needed help. I had to break the seal on my emergency kit. I've been exposed. If I move through the whole station now, you'd spread radiation contamination, Alex finished, closing his eyes briefly. Bell drifted closer to the communication console. Engineer Morgan sacrificed safety for our people. That's what humans do sometimes, Alex said quietly. Bell's lights pulsed in a pattern Alex had never seen before. Commander, Morgan's voice was fading. The prototype. I think it works. Theoretical models were promising. Tell Bell. The communication cut out as the containment field failed completely. Bell's entire form glowed with intense, focused light. I must go to Section 2. Now. Why? Alex asked. Your engineer showed us something important about humans today. Bell's patterns translated. Now I must show you something about the lumen. Without waiting for permission, Bell rushed from the command center. Alex followed, confused but hopeful. At the Section 2 barrier, they found the 5 rescued lumen clustered together, their forms merged into a single, brilliantly glowing mass. Bell joined them immediately. What are they doing? Alex asked Kate, who had arrived moments before. I think, she said, watching in awe. They're pulling the radiation back, absorbing it through the walls. Alex pressed his hand against the barrier, watching as the lumen worked together to save the human who had risked everything to rescue them. For the first time, Alex truly understood that the barrier between their species might be physical, but it had never been emotional. In the medical bay, Morgan lay unconscious, surrounded by monitoring equipment. The radiation exposure had been severe, but thanks to the lumen's extraordinary effort to absorb the radiation through the station walls, it hadn't been fatal. Dr. Ray moved quietly around the bed, checking readings and adjusting medication. Alex stood at the observation window with Bell floating on the other side of the protective barrier. Your doctor says Morgan will recover. Bell's light patterns asked. Alex nodded. Yes, it will take time, but the prognosis is good. What your people did, it saved Morgan's life. We had never attempted to pull our radiation back through solid matter before. Bell's lights pulsed softly. It was difficult, but when we saw what Morgan had sacrificed for our people, we had to try. Alex turned to face Bell directly. You know, I've been thinking about your question, why humans and lumen can't touch. Maybe the answer isn't about biology or radiation. Bell's form brightened with interest. What do you mean? Maybe we don't need to touch physically to connect deeply, Alex said. Morgan was willing to die to save strangers of a different species. That connection goes beyond physical contact. Bell was silent for a moment, its lights shifting through thoughtful patterns. We Lumen have always defined connection through physical merging. Bell finally responded. But what Morgan showed us was a different kind of merging, a willingness to put another's needs before one's own. As they spoke, the door to the medical bay slid open. Kate entered, excitement evident on her face. "You both need to see this," she said, holding up a datapad. Morgan left notes about the prototype. The team has been working nonstop to complete it based on these designs. The screen showed the modified shield concept, not a barrier to block radiation, but a field that could communicate with lumen physiology, encouraging their crystalline bodies to modulate their natural emissions to safe levels for humans. "The team believes it will work," Kate explained. "They've run simulations using data from the crisis. When the lumen pulled back their radiation to save Morgan, it provided exactly the information needed to complete the design." Bell's entire form glowed brightly. "So Morgan's sacrifice may have provided the solution we sought all along." "It seems so," Alex said, smiling. "That's typically human, finding answers in the most unexpected places." 3 days later, Morgan had recovered enough to sit up in bed. The entire human lumen research team gathered in the medical bay's observation room, separated as always by the protective barrier. "The prototype is ready for testing," the lead human scientist announced. "We call it the handshake device." On a pedestal in the center of the room sat a small disc-shaped object. When activated, it projected a shimmering field just large enough to envelop a human hand or a small portion of a lumen's form. Bell approached the human side of the barrier. "The Lumen Council has prepared a special ceremony to honor Morgan and all humans. We have learned something profound from your species." "What's that?" Alex asked. "That true strength comes not from physical invulnerability, but from the willingness to risk oneself for others." Bell's lights pulsed with emotion. "Your physical fragility has shaped your remarkable capacity for courage and empathy." Morgan, watching from the medical bed, smiled weakly. "Does this mean we can finally shake hands?" Bell's lights brightened. "The device must be tested under controlled conditions first. But yes, soon we may be able to touch, briefly and safely." A lumen scientist activated the prototype. The field glowed softly between the species, not separating them, but creating a space where they might soon meet. "Morgan," Bell's patterns translated clearly, "your sacrifice has done more than advance our scientific understanding. It has given us a new definition of connection, one based not on the merging of forms, but on the meeting of hearts." For the first time since their species had met, the question, "Why can't we ever touch you, human?" had begun to find its answer. 1 year had passed since the crisis. The space station had been fully repaired and expanded, now serving as the official center for human-lumen relations. What had begun as a scientific curiosity had blossomed into a thriving partnership between the species. The Grand Hall, specially built for this day, gleamed with light that danced through crystal structures placed throughout. Humans and lumen gathered together, though still separated by the familiar barriers. Today, however, that would change. Morgan stood at the center of the hall, fully recovered and dressed in a formal uniform. On a pedestal nearby rested the culmination of a year's work, not just a simple handshake device, but a full contact suit. The sleek, lightweight garment contained millions of microscopic modulators that could communicate with lumen physiology, creating a safe interface between the species. "Nervous?" Alex asked, adjusting Morgan's collar. Morgan smiled. "A little. A year of testing, and we're finally going public with this." Bell floated on the other side of the barrier, its light patterns shifting with what everyone now recognized as excitement. The translator was hardly needed anymore. Most humans had learned to read basic lumen light patterns, just as the lumen had learned to interpret human facial expressions. "Let us begin," called out the human ambassador, who had arrived from Earth for the ceremony. Morgan stepped forward and put on the contact suit. It activated with a soft hum, the surface shimmering slightly as the modulators came online. Bell approached the barrier as attendants deactivated the section directly between them. For a moment, nothing separated human and lumen, the first time such direct exposure had been permitted outside laboratory conditions. The crowd held its breath. Morgan extended a hand, covered in the contact suit's material. Bell extended what approximated a limb, its crystalline form glowing steadily. Their hands met in the space between their worlds. No alarms sounded. No emergency systems activated. The modulators in the suit worked perfectly, communicating with Bell's form, encouraging the crystalline being to adjust its radiation to safe levels precisely where they touched. A cheer erupted from the human side, while the lumen pulsed with bright, joyful patterns. "It works," Morgan whispered, eyes wide with wonder. Bell's form glowed with intense blue light. "After all this time, we touch." The contact could only last for a few minutes before the suit needed to recalibrate, but it was enough. The barrier between their species was no longer absolute. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Alex and Bell met in a quiet corner of the station, a small handshake device active between them. "Did you ever think we'd get here?" Alex asked, his fingertips lightly touching Bell's crystalline surface through the protective field. "Not when we first met," Bell's patterns translated. "When I asked why we couldn't touch you, I feared the answer would always be because nature forbids it. Humans don't accept nature's limitations easily." Alex smiled. "That is your gift to the universe," Bell responded. "You see barriers as challenges, not absolutes." Around them, humans and lumen mingled more freely than ever before. Some humans wore contact suits, while others used smaller handshake devices. Lumen had learned to modulate their radiation in certain areas of the station, creating safe zones for brief interactions. "We're still very different," Alex noted. "The contact remains limited, temporary." "Yes," Bell's lights pulsed softly, "but the most important barriers have fallen. Not those between our bodies, but those between our understanding." A group of human children entered the hall, each wearing miniature contact suits. They approached young Lumen with curiosity and excitement rather than fear. The Lumen children pulsed with welcoming patterns, their forms dimming to safe levels as they'd been taught. "Look," Bell's lights brightened. "They do not ask why they cannot touch. They only ask how they can learn from each other." Alex nodded, watching the future unfold before them. The question that had defined their relationship had transformed from, "Why can't we ever touch you, human?" into something more profound. How can we grow stronger together, despite our differences? And in that transformation lay the true bridge between their worlds.